Welcome back to another episode of Let's Talk About Human Rights, the show in which we discuss all things related to human rights. I'm your host, Jules Allender, and I am part of the California chapter for Youth for Human Rights International. Youth for Human Rights International's purpose is to enlighten and educate people around the world on what their human rights are, with specific focus on the United Nations Universal Declaration of Human Rights. And with this education, to enable and inspire the youth of today as our leaders of tomorrow to stand up and secure these rights for themselves and all people on earth. I wanted to take a moment and catch up with one of our past guests. As you may recall, we interviewed Shannon Keith from Guardian Group, and Guardian Group's mission is to prevent and disrupt the sex trafficking of women and children in the United States. They identify women and minors who are victims of domestic sex trafficking nationwide. And Guardian Group is proud to announce that they have identified their 1,000th victim of sex trafficking here in the United States since inception of their Pursuit program. This milestone underscores their unwavering commitment to combating sex trafficking and providing freedom for those trapped in modern-day slavery. Each identification represents an opportunity for a victim to be offered a path to freedom and a step closer to eradicating this eradicating this heinous crime. Guardian Group remains dedicated to its mission and will continue to work tirelessly to prevent and disrupt trafficking right here in our communities. As you know, for each show, we like to take up one right and try to broaden your understanding of how this right is important to you and your loved ones. And for today's show, we will be looking at human right number 16, the right to marriage and family. And let's take a look at a short video about this specific human right.
She came up and kissed me one day.
It was an impulse. I just grabbed him and I kissed him on the lips and I ran away.
Because I was like 20 years old. It's not like something you talk about marriage all the time.
But I asked for her number. She wouldn't give me her number.
No, I think he liked me first for sure because
She's hot.
We met in a grocery store.
We were in a class together.
Came up to me one day, says, I got this perfect girl for you.
He was a good dancer, but not too good.
Like he was my soulmate.
She's my queen. Of course, I'm the king.
I said, I have to ask you something. And she said, what? And I kneeled down. And
She was laughing and trembling.
She gets so embarrassed.
what did I say? I said, will you marry me or will you be my wife?
Will you be my wife?
He proposed to me on my birthday.
And she said, yes. Are you sure?
Sorry.
Let's examine these ideas a little more closely. Human right number 16, the right to marriage and family, states, men and women of full age without any limitation due to race, nationality, or religion have the right to marriage and to found a family. They are entitled to equal rights as to marriage, during marriage, and at its dissolution. Marriage shall be entered into only with the free and full consent of the intending spouses. The family is the natural and fundamental group unit of society and is entitled to protection by society and the state. Across the world, there are many different cultures, all of which have a rich and different tradition of marriage and the raising of children. In each of these cultures, how a suitable spouse is found can vary greatly. What qualities one is looking for in a lifelong companion varies. The roles that each couple holds in the marriage can differ from culture to culture. But if you look at them carefully, there is a similarity of purpose that all cultures embrace. And that is a continuance of the family, the community, the culture, and humankind in general. A marriage is seen as a contribution to society and is celebrated in that way. A few examples. In India, Hindu weddings include rituals like the Saptapadi, which is 7 steps around a sacred fire, symbolizing vows. Marriage is seen as a sacred bond, not just between individuals, but between two families. There's often an expectation for the bride to integrate into the groom's family and adapt to its customs. In Japan, while traditional weddings are still common, Western-style ceremonies are increasingly popular, especially among younger couples. Marriage emphasizes maintaining harmony between the couple and their families. Historically, arranged marriages were common, but love marriages dominate today. In Mexico, marriage is deeply tied to Catholic traditions, often celebrated with a full mass in a church. A lasso is draped around the couple to signify their union. Weddings are a major family affair with relatives playing significant roles. Celebrations can include multiple days of parties, music, and dancing. A wedding is the one place that all age groups gather together and party in almost all cultures. Yet today in most of the world, marriage rates are declining. In the U.S., over the last 70 years, the median age for entering into a marriage for women has gone from 20 to 28, and for men from 22 to 30. This appears to be a worldwide trend. As another example, in Iran in 1976, men on average entered into marriage at the age of 24 and women 19. By 2016, this changed to 29 and 24 respectively. In Austria, the mean age at first marriage for women increased from 28 years in 2005 to 31 years in 2021. In Belgium, the mean age at first marriage for women rose from 27.5 years in 2005 to 32.4 years old in 2021. In Bulgaria, the mean age at first marriage for women went up from 25.8 years in 2005 to 29.8 years old in 2021. Only on the continent of Africa has the age of marriage stayed relatively level, and only in the less developed societies. The same goes for having children. In the US, the median age of women having their first child has risen from the 1950s to the 1970s. In 1970, the mean age of a first-time mother was approximately 21.4 years old. By 1990, this mean age had risen to around 24 years old. In 2000, the mean age at first birth was 24.9 years old, and by 2014, it had increased to 26.3 years old. In 2021, the mean age of a first-time mother has reached a historic high of 27.3 years old. By 2022, this mean age had further increased to 27.4 years old. The trend of how old a mother is follows the same trend of how old they are when they get married worldwide. As seen in the earlier data, the more developed countries get married later, and in the so-called third world countries, they get married earlier. And the same is true for having their first children. These two statistics lead us to the most important one, and that is the birth rate. Over the last 70 years in the US, the birth rate has fallen from 24.3 births per 1,000 people to 11 births per 1,000 people. In 1950, Iran's birth rate was approximately 51.7 births per 1,000 people. By 1990, the birth rate had decreased to around 33.3 births per 1,000 people and further dropped to approximately 23.4 by 1995. Recent data indicates a further decline, with the birth rate at approximately 13.2 births per 1,000 people in 2024. For most developed countries, a crude birth rate of about 13 to 15 births per 1,000 people is consistent with replacement level fertility. In underdeveloped countries, the rate needs to be substantially higher, as life expectancy can be much lower. As the statistics show, mankind has over the last 70 years made a shift away from marriage, and as a result, from having children, and as a result, away from having children. The world has only seen declines in populations after cataclysmic events in the past, and each one has reaped horror into the societies that they have occurred in. But of all of this starts with marriage. And it is within marriage that 85% of all babies are born. Being able to find a suitable spouse and enter into the contract of marriage is a skill. Being able to maintain a happy and productive relationship with your partner is a skill. Raising children in a strong, happy household is a skill. The benefit of a good, strong marriage having been cataloged in the history books of all cultures worldwide, who are the most consistently thanked people when someone wins an award? The parents. Who do you think of to tell about your latest achievements? Your parents are certainly high on the list. Mom is number one. Who comes to the birthday parties and social events? Family. Who do you experience your religion with? Family. But marriage is running into trouble today. People are getting married later and later in life, and the result is declining birth rates. Our guest today is a professional marriage counselor and will discuss what is consistent with successful marriages and ask the question, does a marriage just happen or is it created? My guest today is from Sacramento, California. Lauren is fully trained in project management and strategic planning. She has used her skills in this area to help many couples and families align their goals and life strategies. She is also trained in ethics and proficient in locating and handling areas of suppression in life. Her own personal experiences and successes have driven her to help others. And with that, I would like to welcome our guest to the show. Welcome, Lauren.
Thanks, Jules. It's really great to be here.
Yeah, thank you. I'm sorry. Definitely.
Yeah.
Thank you for being here.
So I'm going to get used to that. But you look great, and it's great to be here.
Same to you. Why don't you go ahead and start off and tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got into this profession?
Great. Well, my name is Lauren Thornsberry, and I started working with people in 1996. I come from a large family. My mom is one of six. My dad's one of 10, and I'm the oldest of about 40 first cousins. So I grew up with a lot of people in my life, and I always had a love for people. After I graduated from high school, simultaneous to getting my degrees or certifications, I started working with people and one-to-one helping them get established in their job and life. And that led me in 2000 and what year exactly did I make the decision? 2011 is when I decided to pursue working with relationships. And I'd actually gone through a divorce myself, and it was devastating to me. And I saw so many struggling with relationships, and it became something that I was driven to do. At the time, I was working at Apple, managing a sales team. I'd started there before the iPhone, so everything was extremely busy. But I had this dream, and it came into fruition in 2018, and I've been going strong with it since.
That's awesome.
Thanks.
Yeah, and tell me about your practice. What kind of problems are couples having today?
Yeah, so the number one is lack of commitment. And that doesn't necessarily mean infidelity. Infidelity, about 20% of people will admit to having cheated, but lack of commitment can mean just lack of emotional connection, withdrawal, avoiding conversations, not having aligned goals. So that is one of the number one things. Also, rushing into marriages, even though, as you stated, Jules, marriage rate has been declining. It did start going up in the last few years. So more people are getting married, but we do see situations with people rushing into marriages. And of course, financial disagreements and stress as to be expected. Those are some of the main things that we run into. But it is all very approachable if both parties are willing, and that is what I look at. I'm very optimistic. I'm forever an optimist. So we start out with, well, maybe we'll get into that a little bit later, but really aligning to goals, purpose, policy. We look at test scores. We look at personality test, IQ, and aptitude of both partners. And we go forward as best as we can.
Yeah, I mean, that definitely makes sense in terms of, having alignment between two people to be able to further push, a relationship that is going to have a lot of stress and things of that nature. But also, as, gone over in the opening, the importance of it, not just for me and what I need and want, but for community, for mankind, for offspring and things of that nature. So, yeah, you definitely want to ensure that the person you are building this relationship with and have these responsibilities with is suitable.
100%. You nailed it.
Good. And so, I think one thing that gets lost potentially, and maybe not, and, maybe for my generation and potentially younger, as we've seen in society worldwide how things have changed in a social media era, in an internet era where almost anything can be promoted, right? Almost anything can be, anyone can come up with an idea, which everyone has the right to. We all have freedom of thought. We all have freedom of expression. We all have this freedom to communicate, more or less. But I think what gets missed is, if I'm receiving that communication, can I take that piece of information and analyze it correctly and take a look at, does this suit me? Is this the greatest good for myself and for others? And it seems like a lot of that just gets acted upon, and potentially where we saw declines in marriage, previous to the last couple of years, and the decline to birth rate and the correct raising of families and things of that nature. So I say all that to ask this simple question of, in its basic form, like, what is the purpose of a marriage?
Yeah, so it's a great question, and it's very basic, but it's a question that people don't often ask themselves. And I'm happy that you asked me, and also I'm happy that you discussed what you did ahead of the question, because I think it's all relevant. But really what you're trying to do with another person is find somebody that you can align with in terms of what is your purpose? What are you trying to accomplish? What is that person trying to accomplish? So you are aligning, and ideally you're creating a partnership that is, and this is the tough part, that is free from secrets. Mm-hmm. That is the rocks that the ship will bash against and break apart the relationship, secrets. So you really have to create a partnership that is free from secrets. And that is a challenge, because a lot of us are used to keeping to ourselves and managing the way we want to, and we have our things that we do. But the most successful marriages are those that live loud and proud the way they want to, and they share goals and purposes and similar policy, like how they live their lives with that person. So the purpose of marriage is really that partnership, free from secrets, I would say, in a nutshell, that aligned partnership, if that makes sense.
That absolutely makes sense. Yeah, I would agree, secrets can, and I think sometimes, just, I'm not married, so I am one of those numbers, those rising statistic numbers. But it, in past relationships and things of that nature, you almost like want to justify the smallness or the bigness of the secret. This is my life, and they're a part of my life, but I can have my own life. And you can feel that separation start to exist, right? And
so true.
And
It's really tough.
go ahead.
It's tough. I was just agreeing with what you were saying. It's really true.
Yeah, and then it almost is like, because if we can look at this subject, right? It is a human right, which is a very interesting kind of concept, because I think to some degree when we think of human rights, we think of like freedom of speech and expression and right to have a religion, but you have the right to get married. You have a right to raise a family. And I think that definitely shows the importance of it as well. And then some of these rights can conflict, kind of, or can seem to conflict. So I have the right to marriage and I have all these duties and responsibilities, but I also have this freedom of thought and this freedom of expression and the right to life, like my own life. And so I'm just curious from your viewpoint and your expertise, well, let me ask you two questions. In terms of this being a right, have you seen this right at all start to get taken away from people? And if so, what is the consequence?
100%. And the rights do, to your point, they do kind of conflict at times. And the rights can actually be hard work, the right to work, the right to marriage, and it's interesting because they are rights, but they are putting you and pushing you into a role or into society. And we see, Jules, I respect so much the work that you've done in human trafficking and helping to bring about a voice and the coaching that you've done with basketball. My kids have both benefited from you, and I'm forever thankful. But in terms of those that have that right taken away, I mean, you see that in these girls that are taken away too early. They're drugged. They are put into a form of slavery, and that right is essentially ripped out from underneath them in many ways because trust has been so violated. And so that's where we really see this right not there. Additionally, sometimes people are just working and they feel very stuck to whatever job that they have to do, and they don't feel, whether that's because they're being driven or because they're mentally enslaved, but they don't feel they have the time to create on that right, if that makes sense. And I hope that answers both of the questions.
Yeah, no, that makes total sense, and I think that becomes the insidiousness sometimes of these rights being taken away or imposed upon, right, very slowly. And then suddenly, yeah, you can see how both points that you made infringe upon my right to marriage. I was taken and I was trafficked and I was raped and I was put on the corner in whatever varying degree. You've stripped me of kind of like me wanting to even have that right for marriage.
Yep. Yeah, it's so true. My great grandmother, so I come from a history of people that are into human rights. My great grandmother, Sarah Mary DeVay, started what's called the Wayside House in 1954 for abused women and women that were addicted and that couldn't find a way to get married. And that's one of the things that's driven me as well. I don't think I told you that in the beginning, but what you're saying just made me want to bring her up. And my mom, as you know, she's also very committed to these rights, but it takes a village, what you're saying, and to help these women and to really help people understand the value of being married and the value of being in a partnership and how that can financially help you and spiritually and provide stable pillars for a very successful life if you are willing to invest.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I mean, I agree. It's yeah. I mean, I don't have reality on it because I'm not married, so we're just going to move on. But I agree with you 100%.
Yeah, I know. And you're so committed to your friends and your family, and you've, you're also taking, this is something that, people take their time, and it's important. And I think why the marriage rates are increasing. I've known you for a long time, and I know that whoever you decide, I know you're not adverse to marriage. It's just you've decided exactly what you want, and you have very high standards. And that's also very important. It's okay to wait as long as you need to wait and not go through 4 divorces. There's no stigma to getting married for the first time at any age.
Yeah, I agree with you, and thank you for that.
100%.
So we talked about the marriage rates earlier, and you had mentioned that they are on the rise. So I'll just, according to the CDC, the general marriage rate dropped from 8.2 per 1,000 people in 2000 to 5.1. But this is in 2020, right? So definitely bring us up to speed on what the current rates are on the increase, and what your insight is as to, you shared a bit as why it decreased, but any more on that? And then now we're seeing an increase.
Yeah, so I'm just looking at the numbers here. I've seen it personally, but just Google from 2012 compared to 2022. It's not a big increase, but it's going up by about, 0.3%. And I think what I'm seeing is that people are a little bit more willing to stay together because they have to, because financially it just doesn't make sense. It's very hard to be by yourself, at least in the United States. And my world is around Northern California, where prices just continue to go up. And, whether or not it's a roommate type situation that we're trying to resolve and get better communication and get the people back into the same bed, so to speak, they're choosing to stay together. And this is just from what people have told me and what I'm seeing, purely to survive, to make it, and to be successful.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it becomes a larger topic, so to say. It affects all areas of your life. It's just not your relationship. And with that, let's talk about children, and what kind of effects does a stable marriage have on children?
Yeah, this is huge. Obviously, I have a 15 and a 13-year-old. And so I have seen firsthand, the effects that arguments can have, and also alignment. And part of marriage is that you have to work through difficult situations and not hide them. I think that is important, is that your kids are able to see that it's not sunshine and rainbows and you go upstairs to the master bedroom and have it out. And they don't get to see, how adults can work through points of disagreement in a nice and mannerful way. And that's one of the biggest points that I talk to couples about, is being willing to discuss to a reasonable amount with your kids what's going on. And I encourage what's called family meetings. And this is not something that is necessarily popular. And sometimes people think, oh, we're in trouble. But really, we encourage family meetings so that the kids can be a part of some of the decision making, can understand financially to a degree. We don't want to put a lot of burden on them, but we want them to understand, okay, we have a budget. We have to align around what we're trying to achieve. And the more the kids are involved, the more you're setting them up for success, and the more you're educating them to be in a group, to be working as a team with somebody or multiple people. And that's one of the things that I love about helping people with marriage, is that in turn that helps with the right to work. It helps with so many of these other human rights by building on having this relationship with this one person and bringing the kids into that relationship. So it expands out and it creates that group feel and provides really a base of success for these kids as they go into the real world.
Right. And I think, in terms of that same effect, if you take a child that comes from a stable marriage, what is their then effect on society? What is their then effect on future generations beyond, the ability to work and produce? And
It's huge. I mean, you see when you have married, stable parents, like, I mean, we'll just say your parents are phenomenal. And I know you and your brother, and you just see your effects throughout the world. I mean, I've seen it for 20 years, what you guys have done, and it's impressive. And I know what they've done is impressive. And um, it's interesting because your parents have inspired me to use the technology that I use to improve marriages. And I know there's many technologies out there, but um, it's important to find one that really works for you and where you see and you know that there's been success and you can see the statistics. And one thing I urge people that are listening, if you're gonna find a marriage counselor, find out if they're married, find out if they have kids, look and see how successful are their kids, and ask the person that you're going to choose to be your counselor or therapist, how successful is your marriage? Like you want to find out. But the kids that are coming from these marriages that are a little bit more of a team, esprit de corps, they're going to be successful.
yeah, that's a great point, and it's just such a valid point that gets, I think, potentially gets overlooked. Like, who are you taking advice from? Who's in your corner? Who's in your counsel? Who is lip service and who's actually, kind of been in the trenches of it and have come out on the other side and has a track record of success in any area of life, but specifically something that is just so important, right? And, it's as you were talking, it brought me back to my coaching days, and my profession has been around helping youth and helping individuals, achieve their goals, and I've had kids from all kinds of background for the last 15 years. I mean, you name it, they've walked through my door as when I was coaching, and it's interesting to take a look at, and this is where it really opened my eyes to the importance of raising children and marriage and a home that, like you're talking about, right? It's not all sunshines and rainbows. It's just not. But it takes work. And what I observed with these, I call them kids, they're 18, 19, 20, 21 years old, is that, like, it cut deep. Like what was going on with their parents, how their parents treated them, how their parents were in or out of their lives, it cut deeper than anything else. And it really shook the stability of their life. It really weighed on their emotions. And so I really saw the importance of a parent, of a family that was a family unit and that did support one another and that, fought to do it correctly. And I think correctly, and probably not the right term, it can be such a loose, it's a very non-definitive term, but I think there is an essence and everyone can have a moral understanding of right and wrong when it comes to the responsibility of raising children. And you can look at society and go, well, what has worked and what hasn't? I mean, I think that anyone with two eyes and an ability to really look can answer that question, easily.
So true.
Easily.
So true. You've seen it firsthand. And being the optimist, I go towards what's working. But obviously what you're saying and the girls and guys that you've worked with, I haven't necessarily worked with the inner city kids as much and in a different capacity I have, but not with parents and marriage counseling. But what you're saying is 100% real. And a lot of people, as kids grow up, they try to find a partner, if they've had a traumatic experience, they will actually look in their partner for somebody they think they're going to avoid it, but they end up finding the exact same trauma that they dealt with as a kid. And somehow finding that in a partner, they feel that they are going to be able to make peace with the trauma they experienced as a child. So a lot of times we call this contagion of aberration. Aberration means going away from a straight line. And this straight line in this regard we're talking about is having that aligned relationship. So we get this contagion and we see these families in this cyclic downward spiral. And that's really what I'm trying to help resolve. And the main push for me is education, getting these kids and the couples to read and understand what it takes and put that knowledge to work.
Yeah, and so with that, like when you do educate, what are what do you see? Like what are the changes that you can share? Obviously, what are the successes that you've seen?
It's miraculous. It is a lot of work, and it's not for the faint of heart. But I've seen couples that actually despised each other. They were thinking they were going to get divorced. The kids were in grief, in fear, unwilling to speak. I've seen just sometimes it takes talking about very tough things, because sometimes these secrets are pretty bad, and you have to really make sure each person is prepared and willing to forgive. But when the forgiveness occurs, it is like this burst of light happens for both of these people. And it is like the black, dark clouds that have been hanging over them are just gone. And it is worth all the late night texts of I'm leaving him, or he's doing this again, and no, it's so hard, and to get to that moment.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's awesome. Yeah, I think anyone who has been in a relationship that they wanted to be in, can relate to, an emotional connection, beyond probably having kids that you don't get, right? That
Exactly.
strive to create in that area, that longingness, in essence, I guess one could say.
That's the perfect way of saying it. Yes.
And then does a marriage just happen, or is it created?
It's interesting that you said that. And something you were saying earlier made me think of this as well, is basically, we were talking about how you have to find somebody that has the statistics, that instead of just looking for that firework, we look for that with a professional. We want to have that instant, like, oh, I want to work with this person, or, oh, this is my person. And there is that, but there's also this create. And what that means is really looking, understanding, investing, not being in your own viewpoint. We all walk around, not just, we have things, right? We have our rings, we have our hair, we have all the things around us, but we also have this invisible world of all of our ideas and all of the people that we are working with on a day-to-day basis. And each of us have these invisible universes around us filled with ideas and imagination and problems and trauma, dark, light, you name it. So it is important to create, and that means look at what is in that other person's universe, understand that other person, what they might be dealing with, ask what's happening. One of the things that we say often is respond, don't react, because one of the biggest killers is misunderstanding, and that can come from one word. Somebody can say a word and the other person thinks they're saying another word, or instead of saying don't, they say do, and it's an accident. They're not meaning to say that. They've had a long day and their words are slurred, But instead of clarifying and saying, can you repeat that? They react. So it is very important in terms of creating on this relationship. Part of that create is not just buying the person flowers, not having intimate moments, but create also means being interested, very interested in that other person's universe, asking the right questions, etc. Does that make sense?
Oh, totally. Absolutely. I think that really clarifies it in terms of what's materialistic in a relationship and what is an actual, call it what you want, emotional, spiritual, however you want to relate the other aspect to it, which is the more important piece to it. The materialistic stuff, it comes and goes, but I think anyone who's been in any kind of relationship knows and understands that emotional, that spiritual creativeness is the fun part. It's the tough part, but it's the fun part.
Amen.
Perfect. So what is next for you? What are you currently working on? Anything you would like to share with us for that?
Well, I mean, you and I, we've had a dream of doing some big, concert or basketball tournament. I do hope that we had this dream in 2020. We can bring that into fruition around the Youth for Human Rights. And ideally, I can connect a little bit more with some of these inner city couples. And I do want to get into that community a little bit more and show them what's possible, like what is possible in terms of creating partnerships and how that can help them in alignment with the human rights. I think it's important that we continue to educate, and you've been such a good example for me and my family on that. So we would love to just lean into that a little bit more, continue to work with the Downtown Partnership on cleanups. We've done a tremendous job cleaning up Sacramento. San Francisco looks a lot better. So it's just, constantly day by day, one step in front of the next. And with the Marriage and Family Center, I typically take on 1 or 2 couples per month. And the goal is to help them and let them be free and fly and not need to call or text me, but give them the tools and knowledge so that they can be successful.
That's awesome. That is definitely create and doing this all in the right directions. And yeah, we'll absolutely continue to work together in the area of human rights and make those things an actuality, as we are looking to do with every human right for every individual on the planet. So awesome.
Love it.
And then we ask every guest this final question, and that is of all the different rights listed in the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, what is your favorite and why?
So, believe it or not, my favorite is the right to work. That's the article number 23. And the reason it's my favorite is because I think that a lot of times we take it for granted if we work. And so many people want to work. And even those that are on the street or that are sitting watching TV, having kids, production is the basis of morale. So when people start to work, that is genuinely what creates that spiritual, happy, enlightened moment. When people are not working, they're sad. So it just creates, we saw in 2020, people drinking more than ever, taking drugs, Netflix binging, and just feeling awful, higher suicide rates. So the right to work, it's much more than just creating unions and, equal pay, which I absolutely agree with. But it is just that production is the basis of morale, and the right to work is a right. So if you don't have a job, let's get a job. Just do the smallest thing around your house and get to work, and you will instantly feel better.
I love it. It's one of my favorites as well.
Oh, awesome. Of course.
Well, thank you very much for your time today, for sharing what it is you are doing and giving us education and information around a human right that probably doesn't get talked about enough, and that is marriage and family, because it is the backbone of our society, of every society on planet Earth. So keep going.
I'm humbled. I'm grateful. I am excited to be here. So thank you so much, Jules, and the entire team at Anaya. You guys are incredible, and thank you for all you're doing.
Thank you. All right, well, that's our show for this week. As always, I hope you enjoyed what was shared by Lauren on such an important topic, and a topic that relates to everyone across the world, and that definitely does not get enough talk time. It does not get enough share time, and yeah, it needs to be taken to heart, and we need to spread the word, and you need to have a right to marriage and family. As always, you can reach out to us on all of our social media platforms. We now have a YouTube page called Let's Talk About Human Rights. Our Instagram and Twitter handles are at YHRCAL, and our Facebook is Youth for Human Rights California. And until next time, I will see you then. Thank you.